10. Homeless teen murderer. A homeless teenager was arrested for the murder of a first-year dance student who was discovered brutally slaughtered in a creek not far from the University of Texas campus. The suspect was Mikhail Greiner, a homeless teen of only 17 years old. According to Austin police, Mikhail was discovered with a duffel bag that belonged to his victim Haruka Weiser. The pair met on April 3, 2016. Haruka was looking at her phone as she walked in the direction of the Alumni Center. Surveillance footage shows the homeless teenager watching Haruka intently as she went, then slowly getting off his bicycle and following closely behind the 18-year-old woman. He pulled out some kind of object from his pocket, followed Haruka across a bridge and outside the view of security cameras. Mikhail wasn't seen again until nearly 2 hours later in the surveillance footage, now with a slight limp and carrying a small duffel bag. As it turned out, Mikhail Greiner had left his grandmother's home 300 miles, 483 kilometers away after she kicked him out, saying a boy his age needed to make it on his own in the world. He then made his way to Austin with absolutely no money and no prospects and became homeless. He also turned to crime and targeted Haruka as an easy person to attack. He brutally murdered her, assaulted her, and stole what little good she had in her possession at the time. In 2018, Mikhail Greiner was given life in prison and will be eligible for parole and 40 years. 9. Killer swordsman. A homeless man was stabbed to death by a man wielding a samurai sword and tattooed with some kind of ninja star on the center of his forehead. The man with the samurai sword also happened to be homeless. His name is George Christopher Livingston. He's been charged with second-degree murder in the state of California. The police first received the 911 call on a Saturday afternoon in November of 2017. Someone was discovered lying by the railroad tracks covered in blood about 10 miles, 16 kilometers from West Palm Beach. Police found the homeless victim badly cut up and a 3-foot, 1-meter-long samurai sword lying nearby. One of the witnesses was George Livingston, who, upon being questioned, quickly admitted that he was the guilty party. According to what George said, he and his victim, David Beckett, had gotten into an argument. The argument led to an altercation on the edge of a homeless encampment beside the railroad tracks, and George stabbed David with the sword. We don't know where in the world George managed to procure a samurai sword, but he used it to slash another person. David didn't survive, and George is now looking at spending the rest of his life behind bars. As it happens, George was already a felon and has a pretty long list of past arrests, including at least 1 count of aggravated stalking. He actually wasn't allowed to be carrying a weapon at the time of the murder, not even a sword. 8. Serial squatter. 3 women who were targeted by a vagrant serial squatter recently spoke up about just how horrifying their experiences were. The serial squatter's name was Jameson Bachman, and after he was done killing people's cats, assaulting them, and refusing to leave their homes, he went on to murder his own brother in a psychotic fit of rage. But this was only after he'd already destroyed the lives of dozens of people. Jameson was from Pennsylvania, and he cooked up a scheme to rent a room in a person's house and then turn their lives into a living nightmare. He would use a fake name in his Craigslist ad, tell people he was a lawyer, and then never pay rent. He came off as neat, educated, and a great living partner. But after several days of living together, he would start to do all kinds of strange things, like steal their light bulbs, clog their toilet with cat litter, and argue for no reason. One of his first victims was Arlene Herbaidian, whom he moved in with in 2006. After he refused to pay rent, he strangled Arlene, then went to the police to file a report claiming that she had tried to stab him. This resulted in Arlene being kicked out of her own house by the police. Then, while she was locked out of her own home, Jameson killed her 2 pet cats. He went on to ruin a lot more people's lives. One of the last was Alex Miller, whom he lived with in 2017. He ended up beating her badly, as well as cutting her up with a knife, and he was arrested and sent to jail. When his brother Harry bailed him out and allowed Jameson to stay in his home, Jameson beat him to death. He tried to flee in his dead brother's car but was surrounded by a SWAT team and taken to jail. Jameson died in prison on December 8, 2017, at the age of 60. 7. fake homeless woman. Micah Leigh Dominguez was exposed back in 2017 for pretending to be homeless. Micah, who's from Virginia, was caught panhandling, even though she wasn't a vagrant and didn't actually need the money. People saw her panhandling, became suspicious, and followed her back to her brand new Fiat. She had been standing on the median begging for money from people passing by in cars, then taking all their kind charity back to her own car and driving home. When she was confronted on video by a pair of men who caught her red-handed, Micah claimed that she was panhandling because she had a disability and needed the extra money. And then after that incident, Micah was arrested and thrown in the Henrico County Jail for allegedly having some kind of unhinged breakdown and thrown bottles of Gatorade at people's vehicles. This happened after she'd been ousted as a fake homeless person and went back to begging at the intersection after 2 million people had watched the video of her being caught on YouTube. Instead of giving her change, the people that drove by berated her and harassed her until she broke down and started flinging Gatorade at them. 6. The Homeless Hunter. In March of 2022, police offered a reward of $10,000 for any information that could lead to the arrest of a man who started hunting homeless people in the streets of Manhattan. His crime spree began at about 5 o'clock in the morning on March 12th. The unidentified man, dressed completely in black, approached a vagrant where he slept on the side of the street in Soho and shot him in the arm. The vagrant would later be taken to the hospital where he made a full recovery. About 1 hour after that, the man found his second victim snoozing peacefully in a sleeping bag near Lafayette Street. This time, the man with the gun shot the vagrant in the head and neck, killing him almost instantly. He then took off and nobody has any idea who he is. What we do know is that the second incident was caught on camera, but unfortunately there's nothing to identify the man from, except a small slit in his ski mask, where you can see part of his pale forehead and nose. He could be anyone, and because his motive is so vague, without any physical evidence, the police don't really have any way to figure out his identity. 5. Sacramento Horse Killer. In Sacramento County, at the beginning of 2022, a homeless man wielding a hammer bashed a horse in the face and killed 15 birds in a chicken coop. According to the owner of the horse, she would normally get up at 7:30 in the morning to feed her animals, but that morning she had a really weird feeling telling her to stay inside. She didn't go out to the stalls until 9 o'clock in the morning. And that was when she saw a homeless man standing in front of her horse's stalls with a hammer in one hand. She yelled at him to go away, and he just kind of wandered off like he didn't even know where he was. It was after this that the carnage was discovered. The vagrant had attacked the horse with his hammer, causing huge, gnarled knots of bruising all over the poor animal's body. And on the horse's head were some seriously nasty gashes. Thankfully, a veterinarian could be called in and the horse was properly taken care of, but the poor animal was in some serious misery. Even more horrific was in the chicken coop, where the vagrant had gone insane and literally ripped the woman's chickens apart like a rabid wolf. And to make things worse, the police were already aware of the vagrant, but simply let him walk around even though he was dangerous. All they said when they showed up was that he wasn't supposed to be in that particular area. 4. Hot Christmas. During the Christmas season of 2021, a homeless man became the unofficial Grinch of NYC. A vagrant well known to the police was busted setting the Fox News Christmas tree on fire. He did it outside the extremely busy Rockefeller Center in Manhattan, in front of dozens of tourists and in front of patrolling cops. His name is Craig Tamanaha, 49 years old. He managed to slip past security, actually push his way inside of the artificial tree, and then use its internal metal frame to scale to the top of the structure. That was when he lit some cardboard on fire. As he was trying to flee, Craig was tackled to the ground by a security officer, but it was too late to stop anything. The tree was already ablaze and beyond any kind of saving. Craig had apparently been planning the bizarre attack on the Christmas tree and had used accelerants to help the flame spread. He ended up causing about $500,000 in damage. According to his father, Richard Tamanaha, Craig had probably burned the Christmas tree because he wanted attention. Richard called his son destructive, said he was a total nut, claimed Craig has a drug problem, and admitted he's never been able to control him. 3. The murder of Christina Lee. Christina Lee was stabbed to death in her apartment early on a Sunday morning in February of 2022. She bled to death in the bathtub of her own home after a vagrant broke into a New York City apartment and attacked her with a knife. The 35-year-old woman had never seen it coming and hadn't even had time to react to the intruder before her life was already taken from her. The perpetrator of this heinous crime is Ahmed Nash, a 25-year-old homeless man who'd been a career criminal ever since he was a teenager. According to court records, he already had an extremely long rap sheet going back to 2012. Everything from petty crimes to robbery, but nothing that ever got him taken off the street for very long. In fact, the homeless man was on supervised release when he broke into Lee's home at 4 o'clock in the morning. He'd been caught damaging MetroCard machines in Manhattan subway stations, then trying to escape from police custody. And even after being hit with 27 counts of criminal mischief, he was allowed free to follow a woman to her home and kill her. 2. The Squirrel Man. A homeless man in New York City recently took up residence inside a tree. He became known as the Squirrel Man because he literally lived in a tree. But in March of 2022, he was evicted from that tree, and in a hot rage, he lashed out. He attacked a reporter with the New York Post using a branch and beat a photographer with a garbage bag full of clothes. And he did it all right in front of officers with the NYPD. It happened when the cops and City Park officials arrived to kick the vagrant out of the makeshift treehouse he'd built in Riverbank State Park. The city workers had actually brought chainsaws with the intention of cutting the whole tree down if the vagrant didn't cooperate. The cops identified the tree dweller as Reuel Altanaga, 44 years old. He was so angry to be evicted from his tree shelter that he shimmied down the thing, attacked the reporter with a branch, and then took off running. But of course, he didn't get far. The police arrested him, and he was charged with assault and criminal mischief. 1. Run over. In late April of 2022, a man and woman, a couple believed to be homeless together, were killed on a set of New York City subway tracks. They were discovered around 11 o'clock in the morning near the 145th Street one stop in Hamilton Heights. According to the NYPD, the woman's corpse was discovered entirely inside the subway tunnel, while her male companion had been dragged by the brutal force of the train all the way to the nearby stop. Neither of the victims had identification with them, and so the police have not been able to identify them. It's believed they were trying to eke out some kind of meager living down in the subway tunnels, perhaps using the tunnels as shelter, when they were accidentally run over by the train. According to Pat Warren, chief of the MTA, at least 350 people are living inside 29 separate encampments that are all hidden inside New York City's subway system. That's 29 tiny subterranean villages filled with homeless people. There are also about 89 people actually living inside the stations themselves. Thanks for watching. Would you rather be stuck as a vagrant above ground or live inside some kind of underground subway tunnel or sewage system? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe. See you next time.